Before we start our sermon, let us take a moment to pay homage to the Lord Buddha, to the Perfect One, by reciting the Namaskara 3 times. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So in this path that we are practicing, the path that the Buddha has taught, there are always two parts to do. Actually, one part to do and one part not to do. One part to do and the other part happens. So there's something we have to do. That is what we call the practice. And when we do that part properly, there's another part that happens. We could say that is something that happens. We'll talk about that later. But there's something we have to do that maybe we should start with that. And that is, when I think about my own practice in the monastery as well as before, there's only a few principles which I use, but I understand them and I use them frequently, as much as I can. So, and today I would like to share one of these principles with you, which I learned from my teacher a few years ago, even on a sermon which I listened to when I was not even yet in the monastery, but still I'm using that until today, and I always teach it to my students as well. And the students that I'm having at the monastery as well, I always teach them this principle as well, because it's very easy to understand, but it has a lot of important elements inside. So I'll try my best to explain it as simple as I can, and also make you understand why it's important. So, would you agree with me, first of all, that in your life, in my life, in our lives, problems happen? Okay, good. Now, if you're accepting that one, then that's already good, because actually, when we think about our lives, anyone's lives, all of our lives, all that we are really doing from day to day is problem solving, right? Everyone does that. But of course, being able to solve a problem is not a very big success, because everyone has solved problems. You have solved problems in your life. I have solved problems in your life. Because think about the problems you had when you were 10 years old, 12 years old, when you couldn't solve a math problem, or when you had to get a degree, or when there was an ice cream which you wanted, or when you wanted to buy something from the shop. That problem is no longer there with you, right? Okay. And likewise, everyday problems happen to us. But the mentality or the attitude in which we solve them can be vastly different. There can be very different ways of solving this problem. If you solve a problem the wrong way, what will happen is this. You will solve it. Today it will be gone. But tomorrow it will come back. Or maybe day after tomorrow. And not only that, together with the problem which will come back, a new problem will also come. So you will get two for one. And surely that's not what you wanted. So at the beginning, it seems like you solved the problem, but then later, if you look very closely, you got 2 for 1, which is not what you wanted, what we want, right? And it has to do with three kinds of attitudes, and and this is how we can understand it. So when a problem happens, when adversity strikes our life, then see, this is like hot water, boiling water. When we have boiling water, it is very hot. It is not something life can survive in, right? If you have very very boiling water, can anything live in boiling water? No. So this is a very fierce environment. What happens? So I'll write down these 3 attitudes. The first one is the egg. The egg. So what happens if the egg, if you put boiling water to the egg, what happens? What does the egg do with that in that situation when it's surrounded by hot and very aggressive water? What happens to the egg? It becomes very hard, right? It gets very hard. And it's no longer moving, it can't move, and it becomes stiff. So this is an analogy for a mentality that we all have sometimes, some people more, some people less, right? When a problem happens to us and we become hard, so that means we don't want to change, we don't want to give in. We sometimes become, let's say, angry, upset, and sooner or later, what we try to do is change the other person, change the outside world, so that we can get what we want. So we insist on on my way, right? I'll give you an analogy because then you will understand it better. In my life, you see, these days I'm living with a lot of people in one place, a lot of monks. So we all share one big building, and we have clotheslines where we all put our clothes, right? And our clothes have numbers, which means there's no risk. We will find our clothes. If we find the number, there's no problem. But of course, now if there's a lot of clothes on a clothesline, and especially in days like these, it's raining, it can rain any moment. And what happens when it's raining is some monk, whoever is around, he will immediately go, take all the clothes from the clothesline, because he doesn't want them to get wet, take them inside and collect them on a pile, collect them on a place. And that's what he does for the others. So he does it only because of goodwill and because he wants to help the others. But what can happen is, so for example, you put your clothes on a clothesline, but you're busy and you're walking around and have all these kind of things to do. Then whenever the time you're there, you think to yourself, okay, I should get my clothes from the clothesline, but then you can't find them, right? So then problem happens. So what do? Somehow you start to look for the clothes, right? So now, I'm sure you had situations in your life when you were looking for something, when you couldn't find something. And I know very much, typically, for 5 minutes we are calmly doing it. 5 minutes we can be relaxed. But what happens after 5 minutes? Even you know very much that no one can't be at fault. No one has done anything intentionally to hurt you. No one has taken your things. No one has taken my things. But our mind is very easy to find someone there who has done something wrong, right? He has done that. Why did he do that? He must have taken it. Something like that. So, what can happen, typically happens is, we are looking for something. In this case, now example, I'm looking for my clothes. And the tendency of the mind is, of course, to always feel, why did somebody do that? Why did they put the clothes off the clothesline? Why did they put it there? And this person is at fault. So sometimes you can spend half an hour, 1 hour, a lot of time looking for your things, and you still can't find it. See, imagine I can look for this clothes for 1 hour, but still I haven't found it. But what have I done in this 1 hour? At least in my mind, what have I done? I have complained, I was upset, I was miserable. Sometimes if it goes very worse, what happens? We start to accuse others. We start to accuse them, sometimes not even like directly, but it's in the background of our voice. You can hear the accusation when we talk to our brother, family members, right? And so what we have done is, that is the egg, right? Because there's my clothes and I can't find them. Now everything else doesn't matter. This is the only thing that matters. I'm the center of the universe, and you should tell me where my clothes are and why did you put them away. And then we can spend 1 hour just getting upset. So this is the egg, right? So whenever there's a problem and we don't want to give in, we just want to stick to our idea of what should be done, and not only that, but we actually we actively try to change others or the world to make it happen. Usually that is this kind of unflexible mentality of an egg. So that's totally fine. Whatever you recognize in your life as these are some things we all have, but it's good to recognize that. And of course, now okay, we'll talk about this later. So now let's come to the second mentality. So now you understood the egg. So when a problem happens to the egg doesn't want to change, it becomes hard. Now then there's another object which we can look at, or another food, which is potato.
Now, if there is no alternative, what we have, what is it?
Yeah, egg can't do anything, that's true. So the egg, we can't blame the egg for becoming hard, because that's in the nature of the egg. But the mind can have a choice. So we are not an egg. That means egg can be a mentality that we have practiced. That is true. So sometimes it's not easy to come out of this habit. That's true. But that's why I'm discussing this, we have a chance to make these conscious decisions and reflect on our attitude in that moment. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes we can direct our path. So I will give you an example of that also, but it's a good question. So second point is the potato. What's the nature of a potato when you cook it, or when it gets when you put it around hot water. It becomes soft. So when a problem strikes to the potato, it becomes soft. So soft means it's basically falling apart. Right? If you cook it for a long time, it'll fall apart at some point, right? So this hardness, I think, usually goes towards these emotions like anger and blame. It's more towards that aspect. The softness here is not a softness in the good sense, because there's also another kind of a softness. But this softness here refers to this kind of when problems happen, it's like we sink into ourselves. We become very small. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we complain, but not fighting with the world. Actually, we just give up. Frustration, depression, and things like that. So it's also a kind of a natural way to deal with problems, but at that moment we can forget the problem, but it doesn't really solve any problem, right? Just to cry about it doesn't really solve anything. But of course you can say it's better than fighting, right? If you fight, that means you're actively generating more negativity towards you. But if you at least not fight, that's good. But it's not like the thing that we want. So, for example, I want to be with this person. This is the idea. I want to be with this person, but but there's another man who goes out with this woman. Now, this is a typical example in society. Now, then there can be some who will try to actively boycott and try to actively bring people apart. Right? This is very, very unnice. Very bad intentions are there. But then, of course, there are others who just cry. Oh, I wish life would be different. Why can't I be with this person? So they will cry and they will cry, and still the root of the problem remains, right? So nothing changes about that. So this is the potato. So in every problem which you can have in your life, you can always recognize these are various ways to deal with your problem. So you need to recognize what is the attitude at that moment, and also are there any alternatives to solve this problem. So the potato is just crying about it and wishing the world would be different, but not doing anything actually. Not doing what you could do to make the world better for you, right? So again, in here, I'm not explaining these things to blame anyone or to say, look how nonsense people are and why they do that, because most of the times these things are happening and people don't know that there's another way. That's why it happens. But when you know it, you can also change, and you have to understand how you can actually come out of this. So potato is another. So now the third mentality, which we can talk about, is, let's think about this coffee powder. Coffee powder. What happens to coffee powder? What is there is hot water. Hot water is very aggressive. It's very, as I said, so this is only a story. It is it's very aggressive. But what does the coffee powder do to that water? It dissolves So dissolving means actually it's giving up in a certain way. It's giving up its own intention to remain as it is. So it's giving itself to the water, and what does it happen to the water as a result?
What takes control?
Yes, we can say that. It's more like a symbiosis. Actually, it's more like these two things become one, and they're together. They are creating something very, very new, right? What are they creating? So aren't they creating something very tasty? Now we are talking in a two-dimensional sense, right? Don't forget about the other parts of the sermons when I'm talking about there's no taste and things like that. But from our normal way of thinking about the world, it enriches the water with taste, flavor. So it's a well-smelling. So I hope only if you like coffee, some people don't like it, so then take another drink. But generally we say it's a well-smelling, well-tasting substance. And also when you drink that coffee, what happens? It boosts your energy. So you have energy. So which means it has enriched the water by a lot, isn't it? So coffee powder is very different than the other two. So what does it mean now in relation to the problems which we have and to the way we deal with them? So if you come back to this example of the clotheslines, now, see, me complaining and accusing others would be probably the egg, and probably if I take 1 hour to look for my clothes, and once I find them, and then what I would have to do in that case is probably next time I will hang my clothes, I will make a big sign: don't ever take these clothes, and you'll install a CCTV camera so that you can check whoever touches these clothes, and then you can haunt him and go to the court or something like that. So this is just right. So this would be insisting on your way more and more and more. So you might know people who are like that with their things, right? People who say, if you touch this and don't, and this is mine, don't do this, and so on and so on, like as if it's like I mean, there are funny stories we have even in our monastery. Like, for example, now generally speaking, that's my impression. Now, when we come from Europe to here, most of the times the Mahatyas, who are the Anagarikas, when we are living among each other, there's a big sense of community. So that means, for example, slippers. Anyone's slippers are mine also. So that means it doesn't matter. They are there, so I can take them. So because people don't feel that much that these things are mine, anyone can use, right? So, but if we come from Europe, sometimes we are used that everyone has his own things. So, for example, when I came to the monastery, I had my slippers, but a few days later, sometimes, they were no longer there. They had their own feet, and they were traveling through the monastery. Someone took them, and not because of any bad reason, just because everyone feels we all share these things, right? So this was a test for me back in the day, 2.5 years ago, when I had my first pair of slippers, and these were not the last ones. I had a few of them. At some point I gave up, even trying to have them. But I actually never fought with anyone. I was okay. If they take it, then they take it. But not everyone is like that, right? Sometimes when people lose their slippers, then they go and fight with others, or then they write their name in big letters, so they put it below their bed, and things like that. So you can make yourself quite miserable, insisting on your way. So,
for example, if you're in a apartment building and you're in a parking area for your car,
yeah,
if somebody else is constant parking, then if you put a board saying, I do not park here,
yeah,
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong there.
yeah, true. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, of course, there are conventional rules where, for example, now this is my parking spot, and
It's not being selfish.
no,
It's just part of your life. So
yeah. You can always ask. I mean, if it's really yours, you can always go and tell them and tell or write. Please, would you mind? This is property of this person. Please don't use. We have all the right to do so. But the question always is, how do we think while doing all these things, right? So doing it is okay, and that's totally fine. See, even we also write our names or our numbers on the clothes and so on. But the question is, if you do it with a lot of anger, or if done with a lot of anger, then anger is always a sign of this mentality, basically, right? So, or what happens if somebody still does it? Do we get upset about it and complain, or can we say, okay, now can we be someone that, yeah, the convention is for me to park there, and of course that is how it should be done, because even, for example, you know that if somebody is intentionally parking on your parking spot, he will also acquire a demerit, isn't it? Normally that person, when parking on other person's parking spot, he will acquire a demerit for doing so. So out of this reason alone, also, it's totally fine to inform that, no, please don't use this, right? And because of, so that's fine. But then the question is, if something happens and somebody has parked, how do we react in that moment? Can we be flexible in our mind to say, now, okay, then that can't happen, so let me just park somewhere else for today at least, and is it me who can change, or do I need the world to change? These are the two questions, right? Because even the Buddha, when Rahula Thero, as a young boy, when he was in the sasana, also, I think it was the Buddha who gave him this sermon, or Sariputta, I can't remember, but there was a sermon where he asked Rahula Thero to be like water. I don't know if you remember that, but once the Buddha asked Rahula Thero, you should be like the water. So this is also a way to look at it from this point of view. Be like water means, because what is the property that water has? Now I'm not talking about hot water like the other example. I'm talking about just when water flows on the ground. If water comes comes across some kind of obstacle, does it try to remove the obstacle? Normally it doesn't. What it will do is, it will always find the path of least resistance, so it will always flow around. Yeah, it just flows around. It doesn't mind taking an extra path. Even if it means many, many kilometers to reach to the shore, it will take that without any complaint, without any problems. It'll just do, because the water is very flexible. You can always bend it, it can always change its path. It doesn't have any fixed idea, this is where I should be going to, right? So this is property that water has. Similarly, this is also the attitude we should have in our mind. So when problems happen, like somebody parks in our parking spot, can we be like water in that moment? It means, can we happily donate the parking spot, at least for the day, or for, I don't know, So I'm not saying that we can't try, let's say, to call someone and tell them that, and if it's very urgent, we have, of course, maybe it's good to ask this person to remove it. But the question is always, if it doesn't happen, because you can try to change the world, but if it doesn't happen, are you going to complain? Are you going to be angry? Or are you able to play along and find another path, right? So this is where you can see your mind. And typically I would say most people always act in these two ways. This is an extraordinary way. This is not easy to do. So the example I gave you when I have to look for the clothes. So what I try to do, since I'm in the monastery, what I learned from the other monks and from the people who I live with, is, and what I suggest you to do as well, for you to be more than normal, is try to be coffee powder. So in this case it means, for example, if I can't find my clothes after a few minutes, what I do is I take some of the other clothes. So anyways, I'm going through all the clothes, so I have them in my hand. Oh, this is not mine, so I put it away. So instead of just leaving it there, I just take them and bring them, the monks, into their lockers. Because we all have a locker where we put our clothes, so I put them inside there. So that means I'm spending that time not just looking for my clothes and complaining, but actually asking, what can I do in this situation to enrich the situation? So maybe I take the clothes, other people's clothes, if I have the time, and put them into their lockers. So usually what happens, and also when I do that, it's with this understanding that, for example, let's say now you come home today and you open the fridge and there's food inside and you take that food out and you eat it. Is that something you can take for granted? I mean, is that something... So for example, when now we think, okay, I'm going home and I'm going to eat something. Are you sure that when you come home that the food was still going to be there? Are you the master of this food? Or is nature the master of this food? In other words, if nature wants, you will not be able to eat it. Maybe your son will have eaten it. Maybe there might be all sorts of reasons why the food can't be there. So actually that means you being able to consume that food is because of a merit, right? In other words, if for me to find my clothes on the clothesline is because of a merit, it's because of something good that I have done. See, I must have given something so I can dress myself. And just this morning we talked about an example where maybe we as humans, we take it for granted to say that, oh, clothes is not a big problem. Clothes is something I can take for granted because, yeah, we all can take clothes. But see, spirits not always have this luxury of even being able to dress themselves up. And for them it's a big shame not to have any clothes, right? I'm talking about spirits in the other worlds, basically. But so they are asking humans, sometimes spirits are asking humans, can you please help me to get something to dress? Because we need even a merit for that. So even the dress you're wearing in today is because of a merit in one way or another that you're able to wear this. That this morning when you opened the wardrobe, you were able to find it there and dress it and wear it now. Some sort of a merit has to be there. So for me to find the clothes is a merit. If I'm lacking that, what will happen? Will I ever find it? Can I find it because I want to? Just because I want to find my clothes, what will happen? It will happen only if I have a merit. So if I don't have that merit, what use will it be to force it, to ask for it, or to want it? It wouldn't happen. So then...
What we're saying is merit to have.
Yeah.
It is nature which is actually ultimate control.
Yeah.
Final decision.
Yes. Nature is in control, and what really and what nature cares about only is merit and demerit, which is there. So in other words, if there's no merit, it won't happen. If there's a demerit, then that will happen, right? That's the only thing that matters to nature, not what you want or what you don't want, right? So sometimes you can get even something. So it has. See, did you choose the family you were born in? No. Sometimes you got a family which you didn't want, but a good family that you didn't want, but still nature gave you, because it doesn't matter what you want. It only matters what you have given and what is the environment, so then the causes come together. Similarly, you get bad things, bad things happen to us. Of course, nature never asks us whether we want that or not, because no one wants bad things, but still they happen. Enough of that happens, because that's what nature cares about. Now, you can, when you know it, you can use it. So for example, if I can't find my clothes, the monks have taught me, see, if you can't find your clothes, that's because there's no merit for that at this moment. So why don't you start putting the clothes of other monks into their lockers? Because when you do that, you're giving other monks basically the ability to dress themselves. So when that happens, the same will happen to you. So I always find that when I do that, after 10 minutes or 20 minutes, somehow or another, I find my own as well. Sometimes other monks come to the idea to put it into my locker. So it always happens like that. But definitely, I have enriched the whole situation with some flavor. See, I have done something good for others. I have created some harmony in the world, and I have also created harmony in my mind, most of all, right? So even though I didn't find my clothes, I'm not upset. I happily helped others. And so it's a win-win situation. And I have also become a better person than before, right? Because whenever there's like these problems or adversity that happens to us, and you actually go down this path, you're cultivating these 10 parameters that the Buddha asks us to cultivate in order to, to go towards salvation, go towards Nibbana. We need to cultivate these qualities, or we can call the 4 Brahma Viharas: Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, these 4. It's always cultivated with this mentality. And therefore, you will no longer be the person that you were the day before when you practice this. You will become a different person from day to day, a better person, which will help you to do more merits, right? Because the better the qualities of your mind, like the more metta you have in your mind, the more merits you can do every day. The more merits you do, that more you're going to get back from nature, right? And it's like a feedback loop, which is always getting stronger. So the more merit you have, the more you can change yourself, and the more you can realize the Dhamma as well, the more wisdom you can attract. And the more you change yourself, the more merits you can do. That's why it is said, for example, anagamis. Do you know what are anagamis? Anagami persons. I mean, on this path to Nibbana, there are 4 stages of, we can call enlightenment, right? Sotapanna is the first, Sakudagami is the second, Anagami is the third, and Arahants are the full enlightened. But the thing is, Arahants, they don't generate any merits, right? Merits, karma is not done. Arahants are punya papa pahinasa, as the Buddha said. Punya papa pahinasa means they don't do any pao as well as any ping. No ping, no papa. Because they are they are living in that realization of the Dhamma, which means there's no more defilements, no more raga, desha, moha in their minds, so they can also not do any merits anymore. But that means an anagami person, he can still do merits. He still has to do merits. But because an anagami is a person who has just a little bit of defilements left, like just a little bit of, so for example, an anagami has no desire for tastes, no desire for the other two, which is touch and smell. So because of that, not having these desires, of course his mind is much more pure. So there's some sort of ego, like this defilement called ego is still there. So for example, comparing himself to others, he will feel that he feels to be better than others. These things might be there to some extent, much less than we have, but desire for taste or touch or things like that he wouldn't have. So when he does something, usually he does it with much more metta than we do, generally speaking. And because of that, of course, the merits that he generates are also much, much stronger. So it's always like the more we improve our attitudes, the more merits we can do. When we do more merits, nature gives us back more, and we can use this merit power again for the right reasons, right? So one thing is to do merits, as you know, but another thing is, what do you use the merits for, right? Because, see, all over this world, all over this society, people are doing merits, but the reason why they do them might be very different. Some of them just want to become a human again and again, and just enjoy maybe richness, which means being rich. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people can do that if they want to. But the Buddha would say that it's actually it's a waste of merit. It's because once you consume your merits to be rich, then that's going to be it, right? You consume them and that's it. You won't get anything really substantial after that, right? So we have done this a lot of times, but nothing came out of it. Nothing substantial came out of it. But when we go towards Nibbana, that means actually we are able to solve the root problem forever, once and for all. And that means we can find unconditional happiness. So that's why the Buddha asks us to do merits and use them for Nibbana. So in other words, also we need to try and practice this coffee powder mentality. So I'll give you this example of my student, for example, as well. So when I told this to one of my students, then this person also tried to apply this coffee powder mentality in her life. And it was a situation in our school, in the monastery. So we have a school, and most of the anagarikas or the nuns are teaching in that school. She's also involved in that. I'm also involved in that, but so... And there was a day when it was raining a lot. And when it was raining, that student of mine was stuck in a room and couldn't go out because everywhere it was raining. So and she didn't have an umbrella, so then she was stuck in that room, and it was a small library. And when she was looking around in that library, the books were laying all over the place. I mean, there was no clear order in that room. So then the first thought, normally what comes into our mind is, why is it chaotically arranged? Why is there no order in this room? Why can't this person who's managing this room, why can't this person keep this place in a tidy way? So this was the first thought, because the gentleman asked the question, now, an egg can't change itself, right? So because I talked with this student, because we talked about these things, what happened was, now that she knew this, now that she wanted to practice this, in that moment, suddenly the thought came to her, okay, instead of going this path of complaining and fault finding and judging, why don't I myself start to take these books, put them all into a nice order, into the bookshelf? Why don't I start doing this? Without blaming anyone, blaming the other person, just doing it. So then she did it. She started to do that. And do you know what happened? This other person who was there in that room managing this library saw it and was so happy and came and started to help. So then they both together arranged the books in the bookshelf, and then this student of mine had to go to because the rain had stopped, so she had to go. And when she came back 20 minutes later, she looked into the library and she saw that person was still continuing to arrange all the books in the shelf. So, and then both could even rejoice and say, "Sadhu, sadhu, you're still arranging the books. What a great merit it is." So then they both felt happy about this merit as well. So actually, they became kind of friends because of that. So this person who was managing the library was inspired by seeing this person, my student, arranging the books, and she learned a lesson. And now I think, even for the next few weeks, she will arrange and keep that bookshelf in a tidy way without anyone having to point it out to her. See, isn't this a big achievement? How many times do we try in our lives to make people do things for us? And when we ask them to do it, they do it once, but then in order for them to do it again, we have to run after them again, right? Because they won't do it happily. Because we always have to keep telling them. Most of the time that happens because they don't want to do it, actually. They don't want to do it because they don't see the sense of doing it. And usually it happens when we talk from this point of view of wanting to change others. So I remember when I was a kid, not a kid, as a teenager, this time I'm not talking about computer games, this time I'm talking about watching TV. One of the things that I used to do sometimes was watching TV. And when my father came home, he always used to tell me, "Don't watch this nonsense. Don't watch this nonsense." So he had such great intentions. And actually, he used to tell me every day. And actually, I have to say, it was because of my ego that I didn't want to listen to him. And it became annoying to me. It became into my ear one way and it went out the other way. So I knew it was wrong, but see, if somebody asks you to change, do you like to do that? You don't like to do that, even if he's right. Normally that's what happens. That's why also when you try to change others, they will not do it happily, like your husband, your son. Whatever you tell them, they won't do it if you do it because you want to change them, which is usually what we feel, what we want. Because we have another idea for them. Sometimes it's a good idea, sometimes it's a bad idea. It doesn't matter. So that is not the smartest way to help them or to change them. Because see, this friend of mine, or this student of mine in this case, she didn't go to this librarian to tell her, "Why do you not keep this place in a tidy way? You should do that. Please arrange these things." Because if she would have done that, the librarian would have probably said, "Who are you to tell me what I should do?" And then they maybe have an argument, both get angry, and at the end of the day, will the work be done? No work will be done. Still, it won't be arranged. But in this case, so everyone got upset about it, and no work is done. That's the result. But what happened in this case, when the student of mine, when she started to actively arrange it, although no one asked her to do it, now The work was done and everyone gained merits and everyone was happy. Right? So it's a win-win for everyone. And even now, this librarian will probably keep it without any hesitation for the next few weeks. But I guess if she would have talked to her and tell her why and blame her or accuse her, she would have done it one day. Tomorrow you have to tell her again. Keep this in a tidy place. Like for example, when the mother comes to the son's room and asks him to clean up, every day she has to come. Clean this up. Can't you clean this? Can't you keep this in a tidy place? And then the son will say, yes, mother, I'll do. But he actually wants to play computer games. He actually wants to be somewhere else and do something else. So you can keep telling it forever. Because that's what happens when we try to change people. So I'm not saying that we should just keep letting everyone be the way they are. Yeah. So it's a delicate thing. See, as a father, as a mother, we have a duty to put sense into our children. That means it is important to be a tidy person. They have to learn that. The thing is, they need to understand why it's important. Because of course, me as a teenager, I didn't realize why it's important. I thought it doesn't matter. Because my idea was always, as long as I can have fun doing the things I like, I'll be happy and the rest doesn't matter to me. So what does it matter whether I'm a good person to others as long as I can be happy? But the moment I realized that happiness, you can never find happiness in playing games, and real happiness comes from inside, so it matters who you are as a person. That's when I started to consider whether it's actually good to whether tidiness is good or not. But in order to do that now, of course, we need to find a connection to our children. Now, the other day I gave this sermon. I gave this example of when the son plays computer games and we want them to stop it. See, one thing we have to first always check in our mind is, why am I saying this to my child as an example or not? Because whenever there's some kind of anger, even though we have good intentions, because we want the best for our child, now if there's anger, then what will happen? How will this child feel about what we do? He will feel, because that's also a mind who actually needs love and acceptance first of all. And if for example now, if I'm a child and all I hear from my parents is what I should change, then will I not feel that something is wrong with me? Or will I not feel that I'm always doing everything wrong, right? So then that means there's a lack of, we feel a lack of love. We feel lack of appreciation. So in our monastery, one of the things we always practice is try always to see good qualities in everyone first, right? Always see good qualities, because everyone has a lot of good qualities. Because when we can see the good qualities, then first of all, we are never going to speak in a way where we see negative. I mean, always seeing what's wrong, what's lacking in this person. First, we can see the good qualities. But of course, I'm not saying that we should just let the person be the way it is. But when you can see the good qualities, first of all, you're going to speak out of mind with compassion and loving kindness. And when that happens, you can win the trust of the other person. That's why I gave this example. When you want your child to stop playing computer games, just going there and telling stop it will not help, because there's a pressure in this mind that wants to be released by playing computer games, and there's also a need for love and acceptance. If you don't give that, then it will find the love and acceptance from someone else. Typically it will be from friends or from a computer game. So I know when I was playing computer games, one of the reasons why I did it, why I wanted to be good in the computer games, was just because that's a way for people to accept me and recognize me as someone good, someone valuable. How it happened.
According to the laws, but might be against the law of nature, such as aiding in Europe, aiding suicide. How where do you stand on that? Where does Dhamma stand on that?
Aiding in suicide. No.
I mean, where it's permitted by law, like Switzerland.
Yeah. So, before I come to this point, let me just quickly conclude on what I wanted to say before, which was simply that. So instead of so when as a parent, for example, that's why when you come here and when you understand what happens within you, and why anger happens to you, and that anger is always because of a problem you have within yourself. It's never that anyone else is to be blamed for that anger. Now you can see, even I see my child playing computer, me getting angry about that is not my child's fault, that's entirely my fault. So you can solve this problem with the Dhamma. Then what you can do is you can sit next to, so you can go there and either you can talk without any anger, or you can, for example, sit down there and first of all, get to know and get to understand what the child is doing. When you win the trust, that's when you can give this person good reasons why things should be done, why we should be a clean person. You have to explain why, not just do this. Why is it good for you to do that, not for me? Because if you explain this person why it's good for that person to do, then he or she will do it, right? So never why is it, for me as a father, it's good if you have a clean room, because then if I can show this room to visitors, then they'll be happy. Yeah, that's what you want, but that's what's the point for the child? So we have to explain the child why it's good for the child to do and to be a clean person. If the child gets this, then you don't have to ever go after this person anymore. He or she will do it happily, right? For example, now that I understood all these things, no one has to ask me to make my bed in the morning. No one has to run after me. No one has to tell me I should stop playing computer games. No one has to stop me doing that. I'm happily stopping that myself, because somebody explained me with logic why. And then that's a great achievement if you can go in this path. That's what this Dhamma sermon should help you achieve. So now, coming back to the question the gentleman asked, now, when people want to commit suicide, and I know that I have seen people who, at the end of their lives, they feel like life is no longer worth living, because maybe sometimes they have a lot of pain, right? So
my case is where the person is very sick.
Okay.
The person who was, I'm against that. What I'm saying is where the person is very sick, or
Yeah.
she, and will make a decision.
All right. And the person who is very sick, what does he or she want?
Maybe they want to commit suicide.
They want to die, or they want to commit suicide. Okay. Yeah, so all that I know is that, so if there's a person who, there are people who want to commit suicide. Sometimes the reasons are better or worse than others, but if we're talking about the Dhamma, then the reasons are never good. I mean, there's never a good, valid reason to commit suicide, if you ask me. But of course, I can understand why people think that there might be a good reason, right? So because I'm in a lot of pain and I have nothing to expect from this life anymore, right? So because my body is completely shattered, what's this life going to be? So then they feel like, what's the point of continuing to live, right? So sometimes then they will they will say that they want to commit suicide, but I wouldn't believe such a man. I mean, because deep down they also want to live. It's just that they don't want to live like this. So they don't want the pain, and when the pain is so strong, then of course they say, I don't want the pain, but living is good, just not this kind of life is good, right? So especially people who have a belief that there's a life after this, of course they then just hope that I can end this part and come to the next part. But however, they still now suicide, acting with this idea of suicide, is always when we want. So see, nature gives us something which is human life, which is very precious. The Buddha always talked about how rare a human life is, and how you should not waste this chance to make use of it to attain Nibbana and free yourself from this endless suffering of samsara. That's why it is precious. But of course most people don't realize the value of a human life, because maybe they do, and then people say, and I also, when in my culture also, people always said, you live only once, so therefore make best use of it, take every day as valuable as it is. And of course, I mean, this is only ignorance, right? This is not stupidity, this is ignorance, right? Nothing is wrong. It's just that they don't know better. So, and I was the same. So I also wanted to make best use of my life. So going on trips, going on holidays, and enjoying life. So that's what I thought life is about. That life should be that, and most people think human life should be about that, enjoying the senses, right? But the Buddha said, no, that's not the goal that's not what you are born here to do, because you have done this plenty of times and nothing came out of it, and all that happens is you're going to go in the wrong track, unfortunately. So therefore, someone who says, I want to die, he, in one way or another, he never realizes, at that moment he is rejecting something that nature has given him, or is giving him, which is the life of a human. So if you say, no, I don't, so nature says, here, take this human life and make best use of it, and you say, I don't need that. And if you say that to nature, then nature will say, okay, if you don't need it, then you don't need it, right? So I'll also not give you again, right? So you get this chance only once. You get this chance. If you don't make use of it, you won't get it again, or you might not get it again for a long time, right? So the problem with this suicide is that now, when we create this karma and we say, I don't want this human life, then the consequences of that will be likewise. I don't know the details of that, but it must be something like that. So for a person to assist in that, now the biggest danger, of course, is when it comes to your parents, right? So I know that in today's society, these things can happen very easily. I think cases where, for example, imagine your parents are on a machine and now they are very, very sick, and of course the bill is very high, so you have to pay money for keeping the machines running, and of course at some point the doctor will say, so what's the point of, I mean, we might use the machine for a case where we can do more. So that's entirely true. Maybe we can help another person better than this person by using the machine for another person. So there will be a point where this question comes up, and usually the person that they are asking to make the decision will be the daughter or the son or some family members. But of course, if you are not an arahant, to make a decision like that means, in one way or another, you are also making the decision to end the life of a person or not. In this case, your mother or your father. So I think it's a very dangerous situation, and you should never make that decision as a mother or a father, because that could be, not as a mother, as a son or as a daughter, you should never make that decision, because that can be the killing of mother or father, which is the worst thing you can ever do, according to the Buddha, right? Because there is an anantariya parpa karma. Even if it's not your mother or father, it can be a demerit. I think so. It can be assisted in killing. So the Buddha himself said, I think this week I read the stanza. I can't remember the stanza, but when we are in lay life, it's sometimes nearly next to impossible to avoid doing demerits. It's next to impossible. So, as a doctor who is involved in there's no such a life where you can be sure that you are not going to commit a demerit. Sometimes life throws some kind of challenges to you, and now you need to make a decision, and then you can't avoid doing a demerit. But all we can really try to do is avoid them as much as possible. But samsara is a little bit like that. So we have to be aware as best as we can, but there's no such thing called, you can't totally be avoiding that, but hopefully make sure that it never happens, that such tricky situations happen, the one as I explained. That would be, yeah. That's true. I know many people. I saw these kind of in the TV a few years ago. I saw people who there are people who say, now if a person suffers to reduce his pain, for example, isn't that also something that they do with animals? For example, we had a dog in our family, and when it was clear that he is suffering without any purpose, so then what do we usually do in Germany? Usually we call it, we put this dog to sleep. Putting him to sleep is a very nice way to say we give him something so he dies, so he doesn't have to suffer. So I think that intention is good. You don't want others to suffer, so that is a merit. But it doesn't cancel the demerit of killing. So you have both. So you can't balance this out, right? So this is how it works. So if you give medicine to a dog so that it dies, because also a dog wants to live, no matter how sick, it wants to live. But if you give it medicine for it to die, because you don't want it to suffer, then you will get both. Because of you don't want it to suffer, that is a merit. But you also want it to die in one way or another, right? So that will be a demerit. So it will be both. So unfortunately, sometimes these are tricky situations. Now, when it comes about killing a dog, of course, that is much less harmful, but it is a demerit nonetheless, than when it comes to killing a human, let alone your mother or father, because that is the very, very, very worst thing. So it doesn't count. I think it makes no sense to, okay, I don't want my mother to suffer, yes, that's good, but you are going to take her life. So that is incomparably worse than the merit you're doing in that case. So it's best for that child not having to make that decision at all. Let someone else make that decision. And that's what my teacher always said when he was talking about this point, and I can only repeat the same thing. I don't see any other solution to these things as well. So The only person who is not going to commit a demerit in this moment is going to be an arahant, because whatever the decision an arahant takes is free from karma at all, right? So he doesn't commit any karma, so then that is another thing. But I know I am not an arahant because I still feel a self. And so how do you know that you're not an arahant? When you feel a self, when you feel that you are a person. We are going to talk about this. We were talking about this more in the last few weeks as well, or like what I said the other day. When this perception of value, when you see value in intrinsicness in outside world, that's when you know, or when you better to say, when you have raga desha moha, right? That's the easiest thing to check, right? Because an arahant has no raga desha moha, which means no desire, aversion, and delusion. So if that is still there, then of course you are not an arahant yet. Even when you don't feel these, who knows that you might still not be an arahant. So at least raga and desha, these are two defilements which so dvesha is of course the easiest to spot. Dvesha means aversion, right? Hatred or some kind of negativity. So when that happens, you always know when it happens. That's not hard to know because you feel it and it burns you as well. But also on the other hand, it's the most easy to get rid of. Desire or raga is much harder to get rid of because it feels good when you have it. At that moment it feels, to some extent it feels good. It also burns you, there's also a vexation, but desire doesn't feel bad the moment you have it. So it's harder to get rid of. But of course there are people who manage to get rid of both for some time. For example, meditators, people who meditate for many years in a forest or a cave. What they manage to do is achieve a state of mind where they don't have raga or desha for a while. If they go back to society, if they associate the normal things, right, the sensual world again, and they go through the streets and they look at the food and they see people walking around, then it will develop again, because it's not like eradication, it's just like sleeping. And of course the most subtle is this moha part. Moha part is not something you can feel. It's not a feeling, moha. It's more like you're looking through the world in a distorted way, and when you're looking through the world in a distorted way, you don't know that you're looking through it in a distorted way. You think that's how the world is, right? But I would really strongly suggest you to think about this and apply this into some of the situations you have in your life. And ask yourself, what does it mean to be a coffee powder in that situation? And recognize what it means, and then to also try and practice it. Understanding it is much easier than doing it, right? So these three aspects here, in a very simple way, they explain what it means to be a bodhisattva, if you ask me. This coffee powder sums it up in a way. And this is what we can do. As at the beginning, if you remember, at the beginning of the sermon I said, there's something we can do, and then there's something we can't do, but the second part, which means the lokuttara part, laukika means the worldly, so this is the worldly aspect. The lokuttara part is the realization part. So the realization part is nothing more than realizing and then trying to live in this awareness. So that's not something we can really do. So the realization, so we're going to talk about this later, but this is something you can do and you should do. become coffee powder. So there's not many principles I use, but this is I use all the time to ask myself, what can I do in this moment? How should I behave? Now let's talk a little bit about Dhamma. So this part, as I said, is to do, but when we talk about this topic of letting go, right? Letting go from attachment, the Buddha never favored either attachment nor letting go of attachments. So what I mean is, he always said attachment is the problem, or tanha is the problem, but he himself, when he went to practice these austeric practices, and when he went into the forest for 6 years, what he tried to do is he tried to let go, right? By not doing the things he wanted. It's like trying to pull out these desires from your mind, like pulling them out. But this is not something you can do. So therefore, letting go is not the way that works. It's more like this. When you start to realize the truth more and more, letting go will happen. Letting go in what sense? The attachment the mind has towards things will stop. What you do in the normal world will be unchanged. So the way you speak to other people, the way you spend time with them, doesn't have to change at all. What you do on a day-to-day basis, unless you're doing something like papa, which means you actively these kind of things, you should stop them if you can, as soon as you can. But apart from that, the food that you're eating doesn't have to change. The way you talk to your son or your husband or the other people around you doesn't have to change. Going to work doesn't have to change. These things are okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But the way you feel about these things might change. Because you see, right now in our mind, when it comes to all these things, there's always a vexation. There's always worries, fears, stress, and wanting. So there's a huge burden we carry for that. For example, the desire for food, right? It is something we have in our mind. Because of that, we can't eat and enjoy all kinds of food the same. We want certain foods over others. And if we can't get them, we are disappointed. And there's always a vexation building up in our mind. Take the example of food. The other example is love. See, love is a very interesting topic. I don't know if I can explain this point in its entirety today, but I want to give you a brief idea about this, and we are going to talk about it in the next few weeks as well. You have to understand clearly the difference between these two things, which is being a source of love for others, and this is something that our Amadasana Thero a few weeks ago in a sermon he addressed this point really nicely, and I think in Sinhala it means Adara Ulpata, right? Ulpata means source, if I'm not wrong. Good. That is something very, very important that we have to try and to practice, becoming a source of love for others. The Buddha was the best example. He was the source of love. So that means whenever people would be around him, they wouldn't feel judged. They wouldn't feel judged. And as much because he was the perfect one, right? So he was perfect in every way, in his in his mind and even from his appearance. He was very sublime. But he never made people feel that they are worse than him. So this feeling they never got. So maybe people started to feel how much supreme the Buddha is, but he never asked them to feel like that. He never felt that he was anything better than others. Another good example is also Jesus. There's this famous story of Jesus when he was washing the feet of his disciples, right? So that means Jesus also always said, I'm not here for you to worship me. I don't come here to ask you to do that. I come here to serve you. And the Buddha also did that. He didn't come here to judge us and our foolishness, although he could have had many reasons to do so. Because he understood the foolishness of our mind the best, isn't it? But he never came for that. He came only to help us. So he never felt that he asked for anything. Even when he asked, he never asked for any offerings. He said it's good to do offerings to the Buddha as well as even better to the Mahasangha. He said it's good to do that, but he never said you should do that. There's a subtle difference, right? Because he doesn't care about it, but for you it would be good if you do. But only if you recognize the value of that. If you will recognize what the value of Mahasangha means or the Buddha means. So, but he had no intention to get anything from anyone. He was just to serve. And these are inspiring examples. So being a source of love is good. But when we talk about love, there's one point we need to understand very clearly. See, I know when it comes to how do children live. The other day I was talking with someone and we were discussing why people get addicted to drugs. One of the reasons why people can get addicted to drugs might be, for example, that when they were a child, they didn't receive enough love from their parents, sometimes. So children, you and me, when we were children, what we needed, what we wanted, what we depended on was love from our parents or others, right? And even when we become adults, we spend our lives looking for love, right? In which ways are we looking for love? It might be for someone to look at us, smile at us. It might be for someone to tell us, I love you. That's the dream of for many people, right? Have someone say I love you, that would be nice. Or a hug. A hug is a way. Why do we enjoy a hug so much? Because we don't enjoy a hug from every person. But there are some people when they hug us, or sometimes it could be just a touch on the head, like even in our monastery, conventionally we do that. When we worship our teacher, even I think these are things we don't do in German society, unfortunately. But I see now I realize that it's not something we do in the monastery, even in generally. When a child worships their parents, sometimes mother or father can put their head on the head. Why? Because somehow we feel, don't we feel that when the mother or the father puts the hand on top of on the child's head, that something is transferred to the child. What is it that is transferred? Love. Then let's think about it a bit more deeper, because that is something we feel. The child feels that the touch, he feels love through the touch. And we feel that by touching someone, we can transfer our love to that person. The Buddha found something incredibly profound, not difficult to understand, but he found out that there's a problem with this. This is not at all true. This is not at all true. So, we're going to go there, but first understand two things clearly. Becoming a source of love. So there are two different things. One thing which is very important is to become a source of love, or to try and give love to others as much as you can. That is what we have to do and should try to do. So that is how others feel that we love them. Our son, our husband, even the lady who her shopping bag falls down to the floor, so we can pick it up. So that's what we can do for the society and generally speaking. That is one thing, but the other thing is us looking for love. When we are looking for love, for example, we are looking for a compliment or a hug or somebody to touch our head or whatever the things. Our mind is not just, there's giving love, which is what the Buddha did, but do you think the Buddha was looking for love from someone? Let's take a person, let's take an Arahant, not the Buddha. Take an Arahant, a 7-year-old Arahant living with his family, but the mother and the father, they never come home, and they don't cuddle the child, they don't ask him how was your day, they don't show any affection to an Arahant, 7-year-old Arahant. What will the Arahant feel? Do you think he will develop a trauma? He doesn't develop any trauma. He will be okay with that. Because an Arahant, even a child Arahant, has no looking for love. No sort of affection. No, how are you? How was your day? See, why is it important to ask others how was your day? Stories are there. How is that now? I don't know. So what I can say is that, according to the scriptures, roughly around 7 years old, that's how old you have to be for your mind to be of something. I don't know, is it the mind or the brain or the body which is the problem, I think. However, see, how do you become an Arahant? First of all, you need to become a Sotapanna. How do you become a Sotapanna? You have to listen to someone who is a Sotapanna, or more, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahant, or the Buddha. You listen to them, and listening to the Dhamma, you realize the Dhamma. You acquire the Samadhi. So that is a Sotapanna. And depending on how good your paramitas are, how perfect your qualities are, you can advance, of course, more quickly. So, for example, to practice this Samadhi, Sariputta Maharatan Wahanse, before he became an Arahant, he took 2 weeks, because he was quite perfect. Moggallana Maharatan Wahanse took 1 week. Now, in today's time, 2,500 years, generally it takes longer than 2 weeks. It takes quite a few number of years, but I can't say that. It depends on you. If you have practiced it in the past very well, then it might take you a day, today even. But depending on how good our coffee powder mentality has been developed, basically it will take us a while to practice this and practice this awareness, and finally you become an Arahant. So, that being said, 7-year-old child, if he has lots of merits and listens to a sermon by a person who is a Sotapanna or something above, can realize that can also become a Sotapanna and even become an Arahant if the qualities are there. So it's possible. Yes, Arahant has no expectations whatsoever. So in that sense, even a 7-year-old Arahant child, imagine, living with a family, and the father and the mother, they are both drunkards. So they always drink. They don't care. They don't care at all about the child. Sometimes maybe they even beat the child. The child, so an Arahant child would not suffer emotionally even from parents who abuse the child. He wouldn't. Maybe he wouldn't stay in the family. That might be true, because of course, for the father or the mother to do these things, that would be a demerit. So he doesn't want them to do the demerit, and he would go. That might be true, but he would not suffer emotionally under any of these situations. And the point where I'm going towards is this point. Normally, and we are looking for love. So we need affection. What happens when somebody, let's say you are at home and your husband or your wife comes home and she opens the door, she's closing the door, she comes in, and then she's just going up. She's not saying anything. She's not talking to you. She's not saying hi. She's not saying how are you. She's not saying anything, just going up. So don't you feel like something is wrong? You feel like, or she's not looking at you the whole day. I mean, that's the punishment that usually happens, right? When there's an argument between husband and wife, what does the wife or the husband do? No longer look.
Silent treatment.
Silent treatment. So what happens when people do that? The other person now feels that she or he is no longer noticing me, is no longer caring about me, no longer showing me the love or the affection or the respect which I would like to have. So in the other person's mind, let's say the wife treats the husband like that. What happens in the husband, if he's not an Arahant, I'm saying, there's a wanting for being, for her to look at me, to ask me, how are you? I mean, even small things like, how are you? They are so important. That's why I can give you this advice. Whether you like to say these things or not, doesn't matter. If you want to be coffee powder, say these things. Right? These are very important. Even I had another example this week. With one of my students, we went through this situation when sometimes we go to someone and we say, hey, do you know when the bus is leaving? So we go to someone and say, do you know when the bus is leaving? So there's a person who's on the phone, right? So imagine there's a person on the phone and you go to this person, do you know when the bus is leaving? So it's a small question, right? Maybe the person can answer in 1 second, but what is the thing that we have forgotten to do before that?
Please.
Please, for example, yeah, please, and excuse me. So excuse me is very important. You have to say excuse me. Why? Because excuse me symbolizes to the other person that I don't want to disturb you and your time is very precious. And it's your choice, and then not just excuse me, then something like, excuse me, can I ask you a question? So when you ask this, can I ask you a question? Now you're giving the other person the chance to decide, do I want to spend my time on answering this question, or am I busy? And I will say no. So at least you're giving the choice. But otherwise, if you just go and ask, when is the bus leaving? So what we feel like is, my time is more important than yours, so you should take your time for me now. That's what I ask you to do, because I have a problem, see, I don't know when the bus is leaving, so tell me. So this is the egg mentality. But it is very important on this path to Nibbana at least, and if you want even to have a mundane good life, never forget excuse me, and never forget can I ask you a question. Because otherwise, whether you will like it or not, the other person will not like you. Because, how would you feel if I come to you and ask you, and you are on your phone and you have something to do, or you are in the middle of something and I ask you, when is the bus leaving? you feel like there will be a negative kind of connotation towards that person, right? Because you will feel that person is a bit selfish. It's a bit only looking into his problem. So that's why politeness matters, right? Now we're coming back to the point of the love. So we are not going to finish this today, but I want to get you in this idea. So this is the giving love part, which we have to do, and part of this is also politeness, respect. I'll write these things down as well. So these things we all are not perfect in this. So you can always think about where do you fail in your communication with others. Same like when you come home and your child is there or your husband is there. Do you ask, how are you? How was your day? It doesn't have to be a long conversation, but it can make a lot. Because whenever we feel that somebody's interested in us, they feel at least that we care about them. And that's what we do. The Buddha would always do such a thing. Make us feel comfortable. Make us feel that he cares about us. Right? So we also feel better if somebody asks us this question. That's why when somebody doesn't, we feel vexation. We feel this pressure. If your partner doesn't look at you for the whole day, you feel vexation. Why? Because there's a wanting in the mind for that to happen. But it doesn't happen. For us to be noticed, eye contact, or at least how are you, or I'm back at home, right? And the famous example I always use is on Valentine's Day. Now, I don't know how much people celebrate these things here. I mean, usually we didn't do these things also in Germany, but recently, I mean, the young people mostly, they do celebrate these kind of things. And now imagine on Valentine's Day, the husband comes home and nothing happens. He doesn't bring a flower or anything. So that can be a big upset. Actually, he doesn't do anything wrong. He doesn't do anything different from the day before, right? But the day before we were not sad. The day before he came home and went up. Today he comes home and he goes up to his room or to the wherever. But today there's upset because today there's an expectation, right? So however, we always confuse these two things: giving love with receiving love. So, or getting love.
We are coming to the point to get what you give.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, you can realize when you're lacking the respect, when you're lacking in these manners, when you're lacking in showing interest to others, immediately, if you are not around, even if you're not polite to the Buddha, he will not have a dislike towards you, because he doesn't expect you to be polite to him. He will be polite, but he doesn't expect you to be polite to him. So even if you don't ask him, how are you, he will not take any offense. He might realize that there's a vexation in your mind, that's why you're not doing it, so he will have compassion for you, let's say, but he doesn't feel upset. So that's a difference. So there's a difference between expecting respect and giving respect. So you have to recognize our mind has an ailment. When you ask the Buddha, he would tell you there's an ailment in your mind, in our mind, which is the wanting for love, respect, and affection. These are things we want from the outside world, don't we? You can just check yourself next time when somebody doesn't smile at you or doesn't look at you for another half of a day or something like that. If you feel any upsetness about it, then you should know that's because of this ailment in your mind. That's not because of him or her. That's a great way if you can realize that. Because now you have a choice to act differently than normally. Because normally when we are upset, the only thing that happens, she doesn't look at me again for another half a day. So what do? I need to find a way to manipulate her, or to get what I want, or I'll blame her, I will accuse her, or something like that. That is this is now it becomes like a war, right? So actually it used to be a relationship, now it becomes a war. Subtle way to manipulate the other persons. I mean, as big as it sounds, the reality is there's always an element of war in all these relationships. A little bit, if we are honest, wherever expectations are at work, wars are also there, subtle ways of affecting each other and each other getting what they want. So, for example, what I know people are doing, for example, if a wife wants to get something from the husband and the husband doesn't want to do that, now she will find a way to talk about it a few times here and there. Someday, little by little, it will work within, and someday he'll things like that. I mean, and the other way around as well. So I don't know. I don't want to go too much into these details, but I want to bring you to understand something very important. First of all, it's already good if you can recognize if somebody doesn't look at you, if somebody doesn't say hello, somebody doesn't hug you, and you feel upset about that. This upset feeling is because in your mind there's something which happens, a wanting that happens, which is expecting these things from the outside world, and which thinks, now we're coming deeper to the point, which thinks that these things can be received from the outside world. Love is something which the world can give you. That's what we feel. So why do we want love? Better to say, why do we want, for example, we have still 5-6 minutes, but however, I give this example. See, one of the greatest things that can happen to a boy or to a girl when they are teenagers or young adults is holding hands with a person from the other gender. Not just any person, some. That feels very special. Even that can be a sign of affection, right?
It is a sign.
There I have to disagree with you. It is a sign of affection. Okay, then let's think about it now. I'll share this example with you. When I was traveling around the world, I came to Turkey, and in Turkey, what I used to do was there's people online who like to. So I was traveling by bicycle. So there are people. There's a community where people say, if you are traveling by bicycle, I am ready to give you a mattress, a bed, a shower, food. You can stay at my place for free, just because I'm nice. So, like hospitality, right? Practicing hospitality is a great also way to earn merits, right? This is one of the ways that I try to earn merits before I came to Sri Lanka. And so there was this man, he was in my age, so he was like a student. He had a small apartment, and I didn't, and he said, and I asked him, can I stay at your, because I was crossing that city, so I stayed there for a few days, and he said, yeah, you can stay. So when I stayed with him for a few days, this was a Ramadan period, so usually the restaurants would open very late because first the sun has to go down. So we went across getting some dinner, maybe at 11 in the night, and we just walk around the streets, and we were friends. That's how I felt, and I think he felt the same. We just friends, good friends. We didn't know each other from before, but that's how we felt. But when one moment, what happened was, he grabbed my hand, and we were walking hand in hand along the streets. For me, this was a terrifying experience because I didn't have any feelings for this person, and I felt very weird. But although that happened, I knew something, because this was not my first day in Turkey. So what happened is I went through many cities, and I saw a lot of times men walking hand in hand, but not because they were a couple, just because they were friends.
Not sexually aligned.
No attraction. No attraction the way that you were talking about, like this.
Yeah.
Right? Friendship. Now the point is this. What's in holding hands? Friendship or love?
It can be both.
Which means, so if a person, like let's say you live in a society where you grow up and you get this view that holding hands means love. And now you come to a society where holding hands to that man means friendship. Now he touches your hand and you feel he wants to love you, so you don't want that, or you feel loved. Let's say sometimes you feel loved. So I mean there were other situations where in my life things happen that, for example, what happens in Italy is, in Italy, even if a boy touches a girl's hand, even if a girl touches a boy's hand, that doesn't mean love. It can be just a sign of friendship as well, even between boys and girls. But then what happens if that happens to, if an Italian girl touches a German boy? The German boy has this view that, for example, a touching hand means something more. So he feels loved, but actually she didn't have any love in her. She didn't want to give love, she wanted to give friendship. So she touches wanting to give friendship, but he feels the touch and receives love. So how does that work? Because if it is the love that she gave, that you feel, then, I mean, if we feel what she gives, now then we should feel friendship when she touches you with friendship. And we should feel love when she touches you with love. But and take an example. There are these stalkers. What happens when we're talking about stalkers? So there's a person who loves another person a lot. So much so that he doesn't want to stop chasing after her or him. And then let's say there's a man chasing a woman. Chasing means not chasing, but running and going after, because he loves her. And he tells her, "Oh, I love you so much. I'll do the world for you. I'll do everything for you." But she feels annoyed. So does he have annoyance in his mind, or doesn't he have love in his mind? He has love in his mind, but what does she feel? Annoyed. But he never gave her annoyance. But she feels he's annoying me, but he feels I love her. So how does these things work? Because if he's annoying her, then he must be giving annoyance, but he doesn't have any annoyance in his heart. So, is she right in saying he's annoying me? That means the annoyance is something he gives me. That's what we feel. And that's why the Buddha has tried to explain, no one can annoy you, that's what you create in your own mind. As well as, the touch has no friendship intrinsically, nor does it have love intrinsically. Touching hands is nothing more than the contact between two material things. There's not even a single element of love in there. It is not intrinsically romantic. It is not intrinsically friendship. There's nothing in there. What's the difference between touching two hands as well as touching an arm or touching any other part of the body? These are the same. Actually, these are the same. It's a convention of our society to say, touching this part is more different than this part. We feel like that, actually. That's why we cover certain things, right? Is it the same? I mean, just ask it to yourself. Is it the same? Like, if somebody were to touch you in different parts of the body, do you think it doesn't matter where? But what's the difference? Let's say, actually, what's the difference when it comes to your body? These are just atoms, cells, right? Molecules. Yeah, they are formed in a different way, but why does it matter? But what's the big deal? This is a convention we have come up with. it is because of our, so this is where we will go next week as well, to understand that, for example, when I felt this hand from this man in Turkey, I felt, as much as I didn't, as much as now I realize how wrong it was, that he was giving me that feeling, the feeling of annoyance, for example, or the feeling of intimidation, or even when I told you about this, my first kiss as a teenager, or even when you're holding hands, I felt that this is such a nice experience. She loves me, and that's what I feel. But little did I realize that the love which I felt had nothing to do with what she or he or anyone did. This was something created in my own mind at that moment, because what we actually experience is not, these feelings are not in the outside world. This is a conglomeration, a soup from outside world and especially views, right? See, if you grow up in a society and you learn that holding hands means friendship and somebody touches you, but he might have anything in his mind. It could be love, friendship, hatred. The moment you feel that touch, you will feel, oh, he's my friend, or you will feel this friendship, but that is something that because of the view in the mind is created in this way, right? So it's not actually in the experience, and this is an important thing to realize. Why? Because most people in this world, I would say 99.9%, they spend most of their life looking for the chance to hold a girl's hand or a boy's hand. Why? To feel love from that. They think love is in a touch. That's why they're looking for a hug, for holding hands. They think, because why? If I give you these two choices, somebody hugging you, not just someone, let's say someone you like, your father, your mother, your partner, whoever, your child, or I give you a blanket, just a blanket, a warm blanket. So the warmth is the same, right? So when you get hugged, don't you feel warm, physically warm? That's what your body can feel, because that's what's real. And I can give you the same warmth by giving you a blanket, a nice blanket. No difference for the body will accept both. But our mind doesn't feel them as the same. Why? Because we feel that when somebody hugs me, that's not only warmth that he's transferring me, he transfers a love. And so we feel that we want to be hugged, we want to be holding hands and all these things, because we think by doing that we can get love. And the Buddha said that is an illusion, because there's nothing in there called love. That's something you create in your own mind. That created in our own mind because of jati, because of this disease of our mind. And it is because of that we have this attachment. That's why we suffer at the end of the day, because expecting love means suffering, nothing more. So I'm not talking about, so when you realize, the more we can realize that love is not something you can get, because it's not out there, then there's no more, then what happens is all this building on which these wantings, so all the wantings and the desires, they are based on this foundation, on this view that love is something which can come from the outside world, for example. But when we cut down this foundation, all of this will sink together. That means no more wanting, no more vexation, no more suffering whatsoever in our mind, no more attachment. All these things will go away. But one thing will remain, and that's very important, so please don't misunderstand this. Although I say love is not something you can get from others, so even the Buddha couldn't give love. All he can do is, all that we can do, and this is what we really can do, we can create an environment in which people feel loved. Not because we can give them love, but when we say, how are you? I can't give my love to them. Even if I can be a good actor and I hate this person, they say, how are you? They can still feel loved, because it doesn't matter what I feel, it just matters what they think, whether it agrees with their expectation or not. So we can create an environment so that people feel love, and that's what we should do, and this is part of this. So although I say there's no love out there, I don't mean to say that we should try to give love to others as much as we can, although in a deeper sense we can't give that love, we can only create an environment. So it is very important to try and be the best father, mother, husband, wife, and person you can be to others, because they will feel loved. But the more you realize the Dhamma, you'll realize that's not the love I gave them, that is an illusion created in their own minds. And if you realize it's an illusion, you will become free from looking for love in the outside world, because it is because of that you suffer, that we all suffer, because we think love is something we can get from others. That's why we want others to say, how are you? And if they don't, we are upset. Because if you can make your mind so serene that your mind realizes this truth, it can never be made upset by anyone, and it doesn't matter what others do to you. You can still be the best person to that person in that moment and to others, and that will be a huge what we call in Sinhala Yahapata, means like relief or something like that. I don't know, is it the right translation? Healing or betterment or something for others. So you can do a lot of good for your surrounding when you can get rid of your expectations. Not by letting go, but just by realizing that the basis for these expectations is flawed. So it's not about letting go of, it's not about I no longer look for the love that he or she can give me, I just don't care. No, because why do these ascetics, when they come back to society, they get these desires again? Because they think this love can be something I can get from others. But when you realize that this is an illusion, it's created because of this jati process, now then you'll realize it. So for today, the simple example which to prove the point is this example I gave you about the man in Turkey. See, what's really in holding hands? Is it friendship? Is it love? It just depends on your view. So actually it's not in that. It's whatever friendship is a feeling that happens because when touch and this view, when they come together, then you feel friend. Oh, he's my friend, right? Or when you think hands mean love, and if somebody touches you on your hand, you feel, oh, that is he or she loves me. But what do you really know what this person feels? It might be, who knows? So love cannot be transferred. Although that's the world we think we live in. Okay, good. Then let's finish for today. We are a bit late. I'm sorry for that, but okay. So let's transfer our merits. First and foremost, let us take a moment to transfer the merits that we have acquired by making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, inviting the Swami Nohanse to deliver the sermon, laying out the Pavada and making offerings to the Buddha by, for example, flowers and oil lamps, and so on, and listening to the Dhamma, contemplating on the Dhamma, and trying to improve ourselves and become a better person for others as well. First and foremost, let us transfer all the merits we have acquired. And first of all, let us take a moment to realize how incredibly fortunate we are to be in receipt of the Lord Buddha's teaching, and with immense gratitude, let us transfer these merits to all the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, upasakas, upasikas, who since time immemorial have protected and preserved the sublime teachings of the Buddha, and have passed it down to the generations of the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us today to study, understand, and comprehend the Dhamma. Let's also transfer these merits to the Mahasangha, to all the chief prelates of all of the chapters who have dedicated their lives towards the noble path and have committed themselves towards the betterment of all sentient beings. Let us not forget that among them are the monks and nuns resident in your local temples and nunneries who have always been by your side. Through thick and thin, come rain or shine. Let's also transfer these merits to Guru Swami Nohanse, as well as all the monks resident at the monastery, as well as the Anagarika attached to the monastery. Let's also transfer these merits and express our gratitude to all those who make great efforts to disseminate the teachings of the Buddha, be that by transliterating these sermons, sharing them out with others, or inviting others to join them. If any of them have been born in a woeful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in a blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our devotees, friends of the monastery, who for the sake of merits continue to sustain the Mahasangha. Let us also transfer these merits to each and everyone who is involved in organizing these sermons and making these sermons possible, as well as to Lia Ranisha Pereira, who passed away yesterday, a child from the school. And may through the power of these merits, any of them be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. And may through the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in a woeful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in a blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews and nieces, our elders, friends and acquaintances, employers and employees, and our teachers, and all those who have helped us and supported us and assisted us, and may through the power of these merits they be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to the Devas and Brahmas, spirits and demons, primarily the Sakra Deva, as well as all the numerous gods and deities who are committed to protect and fulfill the Sambuddha Sasana. Let's also transfer these merits to our guardian deities who keep a watchful eye over us and keep us out of harm's way. May through the power of these merits they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our ancestors, to all those who have predeceased us, all those who have been family and friends to us in this infinite long journey of samsara. Let's also transfer these merits to all members of the armed forces as well as the police forces who have sacrificed their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation. May all those who lost their lives in the war, be they friend or foe, rejoice in the merits we have acquired today. Let's also transfer these merits to all those who lost their lives in natural calamities such as tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides and pandemics, reminding ourselves that among them will be those who have been family and friends to us in this infinite long journey of samsara. And may through the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in the woeful plane, they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Finally, let us all resolve that, may through the power and blessings of all the merits we have acquired throughout the day, we be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of arahants on this blessed land, and may through the power of these merits, you and I and everyone who has helped to make this program a success become an Arahat Nahanse and Arahat Mihina Nahanse in this very life itself and in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now the Mahasangha will transfer their blessings to you. Raga gin midatva, dvesha gin midatva, moha gin midatva, nibbana parama sukhayin, sukhita taravatva, nibbana parama sukhayin, sukhita taravatva, mamada siyalu loka Siyalu sattvayo Nibbana parama sukhayin Sukhitatara vetnva Nibbana parama sukhayin Sukhitatara vetnva Nibbana parama sukhayin Sukhitatara vetnva Ragagini niveva Dveshagini niveva Mohagini niveva Nivan sapalabheva Nivan sapalabheva Nivan sapalabheva Tunuruwange suvisi ananta mahaguna velen Siyalu loka siyalu sattvayo Nibbana parama sukhin sukhitara vetva Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.